Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany Muller, president of Citizens United, and I am back up here on Capitol Hill because today is the 16th anniversary of the dreadful Citizens United decision. And we are up here talking to leaders who are fighting every day to get money out of politics and to clean up the corruption and to save our democracy. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And we are with one of my good friends, ranking member on House Admin Committee, who helps us actually run all of these bills that we are trying to get passed. The great, amazing Congressman Joe Morelle from the great state of New York.
State of New York.
Yeah.
Empire State.
I was going to do a whole WWF.
Well, glad you didn't. And I'm so happy to be with Tiffany, who is a dear, dear friend. And we unfortunately have too much fun together on a serious subject, which this is about as serious as it can be. And talking about taking money out of politics. And you quoted yesterday when we were together a statistic, which is really mind-boggling. That's in Citizens United. $10 billion has been invested by the wealthiest Americans to really upset decision making that should be done on behalf of all Americans, but is now increasingly being done by the wealthy elites in this country, and should really cause Americans to question exactly what they're getting. And I think you see it reflected in poll after poll, where people feel as though the government is no longer fighting for them and sticking up for their interests, and all of it, or much of it, led all at the foot of Citizens United. But a lot of what's happened is really been an outgrowth of that horrible, horrible decision.
Well, you and I talk about it all the time, but it is not just the sheer scope and size and scale of the money, but it is the policy outcomes and the gridlock and the dysfunction here on Capitol Hill that it causes. And so whether it is, taking on gun violence or prescription drug prices or an economy that works for everyone or lowering grocery prices or making sure folks can afford healthcare, rising energy prices, rising housing prices, all of this actually goes back to the system being rigged to really help continue to line the pockets of those big special interests and billionaires. And so it's really no wonder that the American people feel like, well, no one cares about me and no one cares about the struggles I'm facing, and that they feel further and further cut off from their own government.
No question. And it's really interesting. I had a conversation this morning with Frank Fallone, who you and I know is the lead Democrat on the committee that has responsibility on healthcare, among other things, Energy and Commerce Committee here in the House. And I said to Frank, we should be thinking about healthcare, for instance, as one area. There's a lot of fights about health insurance. But we should step back and take a broader view about what would really serve Americans' interests in healthcare and then health insurance. And you could have different ideas, to your point, on policy matters on how this would work, how that would work. What's happened, however, is people with big money interests stop that kind of conversation happening, often because they benefit from the status quo. So they don't want to see changes happen to it. They just want to continue to have the privileged spot that they have. And so their money stops substantive conversations. And it's, to your one, energy prices, grocery prices, the cost of healthcare, cost of prescription drugs, the list goes on and on. And someone said to me last week back home in Rochester about gun violence, like, what's wrong with you folks? I mean, background checks on guns, and you've got to stop the proliferation of guns. And I said, I completely agree with you. But the gun interests here in Washington are significant. And, with dark money, you don't even know who's contributing to many of the decisions that are being made and many of the policy prescriptions being considered. It is until we get that, you're never going to restore the faith that Americans have that, again, you might agree or disagree with policy positions, but let's have an airing of them and let's consider what's in the best interest of the American public. That's clearly not happening in this environment. It's getting worse, not better.
That's absolutely right. And so we have been talking today a lot about the problems that come from Citizens United, but next January, you are going to be chair of the House Admin Committee. And you are going to be the lead architect of the reforms that we put forward to try to reform the system. You and I have been having these conversations a lot recently. Tell all of our listeners a little bit about what that could look like? What are some of the issues we're going to take on and how?
Well, there's so many things to do, and I don't know about the lead architect. I probably couldn't draw a straight line, but had a great partner. So together, I think you have to do a number of things. First of all, to just address straight on the Citizens United decision, and until we have a Supreme Court that is more likely to view this in the way that most Americans do, we're going to have to change the Constitution of the United States. So we're prepared to do that, to advance constitutional amendment that ends the Citizens United decision and takes away this preposterous notion that corporations are people and therefore have access to the Bill of Rights and freedom of speech and speech, and this crazy decision, which I used to routinely say was the worst decision the Supreme Court had made in a century. It's hard to keep tracking out all the bad decisions, but it's one of the worst. And certainly around electoral policy. So that's one. Two, we have to put a cop on the beat again. We don't even have a Federal Elections Commission. Shockingly, that even has a quorum.
It hasn't had it hasn't had a quorum in 9 months.
Can you imagine going back to the post-Watergate era where many of these reforms came into play? If going back in time saying, yeah, you did these great things, and by the way, in 50 years, we won't even pay attention to it. We won't even have the ability to have real investigations into violations. So that's something we clearly have to do. And then eliminate dark money. We have to get back to a place where the average American at least feels that he or she has an opportunity to influence public policy in a way that the wealthiest people in America do, which clearly is, and we talked about this yesterday, the top 6 givers to the Republican presidential effort last cycle. The 6th from top to bottom gave $100 million. I mean, it's astonishing.
Yeah, they go for over $1 billion.
Right. Lots of people. Yeah. Elon Musk gave 230, 280, I mean,
whatever.
And that's just what he disclosed. What he does in dark money, if he did any, may make it $500 million.
Yeah.
How could you possibly save an American? If you go vote, you're going to have as much influence in this democracy as someone who gave $280 million to the president of the United States. It would be, I mean, it's
laughable.
It's laughable.
And
you couldn't say it with a straight face, could you?
No, and because then he's rewarded with a powerful position in our government that decimated our infrastructure of our government, and then lined his own pocket with more no big contracts.
And apparently, despite their protestations to the negative, gave away a lot of data, sensitive data.
Of course, that's always what it was about.
Right. I mean, it's like, and now they're finally acknowledging it. But all this goes back to your basic fundamental, how are we going to treat American government? And look, in our system, which is, demonstrating its resilience every day, because this is a lot. If you don't have the consent of the governed, in this case, the people, you don't have anything. There's really nothing to this democracy. If people don't feel empowered and feel as though they have ownership about their government. So we have a lot of work to do, but I think this is it'll be the first thing we take up.
Yeah.
Again, in the new majority, that's my goal, and it's Hakeem Jeffries' goal to make sure that fundamentals are dealt with. The fundamentals go back to Citizens United.
Well, and we can't wait to do that work with you. One last thing, I know that today there was an effort to start a discharge petition around getting a stock trading ban bill to the floor. So tell everyone about that.
Yes. So despite efforts by the Republicans to cloud this issue, House Democrats are leading the way to stop policymakers, members of Congress, the president, the vice president, from owning or trading individual shares of stock.
Common sense.
Common sense.
We should be banned.
When I came to Congress, I didn't have very much because I'm a poor public servant and I've always been. But, you accumulate a little. I didn't want people to say, boy, you voted on this issue because you own shares of Microsoft or you own whatever. So I sold it all. You want people to judge you and to think about how what you're doing affects them, not your own portfolio. So we have a bill which would bar members of Congress and the president, the vice president, from owning individual stock. You want to buy a mutual fund and invest your money or in treasury bills, that's one thing. But not a place where you can have a direct influence on the outcome of a business or a sector of the economy. And so we have a bill that we've introduced, Magaziner, Pramila Jayapal, my friends who've been working hard on this, Leader Jeffries, myself, and others are co-sponsoring it. Today, we began an effort to try to discharge that from committee because the committee on House Administration currently isn't doing anything
Right.
in this space. And Hakeem Jeffries and I were the first two signers, and we get 216 more people. We're going to get to be able to discharge the bill and get it on the floor and really take the first major step towards banning policymakers from owning stock in America.
Such a common sense way to restore a little bit of faith and trust in our government too. And thank you for being a leader on it. And thank you for joining us today. And
for every year like this, I want to thank Tiffany Muller and Citizens United. They are amazing, the work that they do, and we're going to get there. It's just going to take a lot of effort. We're just going to have to keep at it until we get there, but we're getting closer every day. Thanks so much.
Awesome. And stay tuned. We'll have more coming your way.